Hello, everyone. My name is Chris from National Parents Organization, and today I'm here again with Ashley-Nicole Russell, attorney and parent advocate. And she's here to talk to us today a little bit about specifically how divorce affects companies and really that relationship between a worker and somebody who is employed. So thanks for coming on again, Ashley. This is the second time we've had you on, and in case people are wondering, that you can catch the earlier show that we did with you. We'll put the link down in the notes here. But welcome again. Thanks for coming on.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me. I do think, this is such an interesting topic that a lot of people don't think about. It's more of like a macroeconomics topic that this effect has. But I think
Right.
when people do think about it, it makes it a lot more tangible and understandable, and I
Mm-hmm.
think that it helps people to see a way to be able to fix it.
Well, that's awesome. And I mean, you're a divorce attorney. You've been involved with this for a long time. What are some of the things that you see?
So that is really interesting. So I am a divorce attorney, but I have multiple firms. So in total, I have six firms, two different firm entities with six locations or with three locations each across the state. Then I've also owned a bridal store, a restaurant, multiple different types of investments into commercial properties and deals. So I've had a lot of employees myself in various different in retail, in restaurant, hospitality, in service industry, which is, the firms that we have are service industries. So
Mm-hmm.
one thing that I've always noticed, and I've known from multiple sides. So, when I was a child, my parents went through a terrible divorce and it was very chaotic for their lives and for their careers. They essentially, started over in a lot of ways, in
Mm-hmm.
every way. They started over. And it was very disruptive to our finances and to my finances as a child. And we struggled a lot. And I remember that and remember it being on one path and then it was on a different one. And,
Mm-hmm.
I went through my own divorce, but we did a collaborative divorce. So it was not financially devastating at all in any way, shape, or form. It was incredibly inexpensive. It was my ex-husband was an attorney, and we're both attorneys. We could have really scorched the earth with each other, with
Right.
limitless
Yeah.
abilities to do motions, but we
Right.
didn't because we understand how that goes and what the cost is of that emotionally, financially. Then, I opened all of these businesses and I had all these employees, and having relationships with the employees is a very interesting next phase of business and that type of life. You affect your employees a lot, they affect you a lot. There's a lot that goes on. At the second closest relationship that someone has outside of a family member is their employer. And so it is, an intimate type of relationship, but it has a lot of rules and structure. And
Mm-hmm.
there's a give and take that's supposed to happen from employee to employer and employer to employee. And that is devastated during litigation. I personally, from as being an employee or an employer, the employees that I have lost the fastest, the productivity or their buy-in or dedication or drive, have been employees that have gone through litigation. And as soon as it starts, it's like a downhill, fast-moving train, and you can watch it and you want to help, but the involvement of litigation in and of itself is so egregious that it starts to take over your thoughts. And if you don't control that very systematically, then it takes away your productivity. And once your productivity has been removed, then your value as an employee is affected. And then you have the financial strain of the cost of litigation in general. But then you also
Right.
have the financial strain of, are you an hourly employee? Are you going to work? Is it
Mm-hmm.
affecting your ability to now make bonuses because you can't be productive? And this affects all scales of society. And it's so interesting, right? So if we think about it that way and we think about the devastating effect that litigation, especially custody litigation, because it can last 17 years. I mean, your employee could
Right.
be in custody litigation for 17 years. Let's just think about that. What would it have been
Well,
like
and
if your employee had chosen mediation or collaborative and was in and out of it in 6 months versus the employee that you have that's been in litigation and motions for 17 years? We know exactly what we're talking about, Chris. You see what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, well, and even a couple of years. I mean, at the fastest,
Oh,
litigation is
yeah.
going to be what 12 months. At the fastest, and so,
And
I
in
think
Corona,
average.
not even close because the courts are all
Yeah,
closed. And
I mean, I think
yeah,
most people are in it for a year to 2 years to 3 years, right? And then you
correct.
have to think it's not just the time that you're in litigation; it's this couple of months before, and it's a long period afterwards before you can really regain your full ability to be a full top notch employee, because that
Hmm.
it is so consuming. It just consumes everything, all the thoughts that you have. And you're right, if you don't control it, then pretty much that's the only thing you're going to be thinking about.
Absolutely. And so I actually had a bank, a local bank here in town, that decided to do a commercial for me because
Hmm.
think about a bank. So when you're involved in domestic litigation, your accounts are very important, all types of accounts. And when you have a banking
Sure.
relationship, you have lots of different types of accounts. And so you have to go get those accounts. You have to get numerous years of statements of those accounts. Right now, generally everything is paperless, but you have to produce all of this paper documents to your attorney, or you have to get them all and download them all. But generally, people rely on their banking relationships to do that for them. So they walk into the
Hmm.
bank or they email their banker and they're like, hey, I need all of this information. And so then the banker has to stop, go get all of that information, send it. But then that it doesn't stop there. Now the attorneys want to know about the accounts, about any loans that have been generated to these people. How did they qualify for the loans? If you're in
Hmm.
aggressive litigation, then both attorneys are going to be calling your bankers. They are going to be subpoenaing them. Your bankers are going to be
Hmm.
prepping now for litigation because they're going to have to start to, especially if you own a business or have any type of, asset together that the banking institution would be required to show up. And so that's just a bank, like a small local branch bank. Now, if you think about how many customers they have, 50% of them are going to be going through a divorce, as are the odds. That's a
Right.
lot of time that's being
Yeah.
spent helping people be very aggressive to each other in a format that was built to be sheltered from that. So,
Hmm.
when we originally started all of our court systems, we didn't have family court. We had district court, which handled civil and criminal,
Hmm.
and we had superior court, which handled civil and criminal. But we didn't have family court. That has recently come about. And the effects don't just happen to the family; it happens to the ripple effect around the family.
Yeah, I think if you started to think in context of how much it really does take to go through litigation. I mean, if somebody's never been through it and you told them sort of all the things that are involved with it, they probably, I think they go, yeah, right, come on. I mean, they're just
It's amazing.
it is so involved. It really is amazing, and it does really consume all of your time, and more importantly, your mental energy, and it doesn't leave you any additional. I mean, you have nothing left to be a good employee, to be a good parent. It is really extremely stressful, and it's all consuming for your resources, right? So, what if people could put those resources to better use? I think that's where you've had a lot of success, right, with the with what you do in your practice.
Absolutely. So, I think those resources can be put to better use. And I think that the way that employers can help with this is that they can lead their employees to better models. They can help their
Right.
employees have better conflict resolution models. And that would be mediation models, collaborative models, so that they can deal with their conflict and let it not ripple effect onto everyone else. Additionally, think about just the toxicity of the people involved in litigation and they go to work. They've just been via
Mm-hmm.
email at 4 o'clock or five, actually 4:49 on a Friday, they're going to get served with a motion. And how
Yeah.
mad are they going to be, right? And then how much are they going to bring that into their work atmosphere? Versus if this
Mm-hmm.
was a protected space where everyone knew the family dynamic is very difficult. It's very scary. However, we know from all of these years that it's a very touchy thing. You want to handle it with kid gloves. You want to use one of these certain processes first before you go into
Right.
litigation because you know that once you go down that road, you can't come back. Like once we've reached that place where everyone understands that and they don't just assume they have to sue, then
Mm-hmm.
that's going to be the beautiful place. That's what my mission is. I'm trying to get to that
Mm-hmm.
place. And I think that the key is employers. So, what I was hoping to gain out of this, Chris, is that people who are listening to us who have small businesses or are part of an HR program, I go to work human conferences and speak to people about how do you incorporate this into HR? This is HR is where employment and personal people meet. It's where business and the personal
Mm-hmm.
lives of employees meet. HR in and of itself is a part of business, but it's very different. It has its own feeling because it cares about people and understanding and making sure that the human element isn't lost in industry, which is very important. And this is a huge piece of that, like we record, you are recording when is there a birth in someone's family, when's there a marriage, when's there's a death. Well,
Right.
naturally, let's be talking about also when is there a divorce? And if so,
Right.
what resources can we have? What you can set up even within employment, employee, like larger campus employment structures. People have set up like support groups with each other. Like if a lot of you are
Mm-hmm.
going through a divorce at the same time, you can communicate with each other and help each other. But the big thing and the big push is employee assistance programs. So
Right.
adding resources that direct, and it doesn't even have to be like a financial incentive necessarily. I think that a lot of people get this like discount lawyer services.
Mm-hmm.
That's not necessarily like directed at what your need is when you're going through a divorce. So that's,
Right.
I think, discount lawyer services help. Those are a part of employee assistance programs, but this is going to be a discount legal process because it's less expensive, but that's not why you're going. You're going because you need to control the conflict in your own personal life, keep and maintain the productivity for
Mm-hmm.
yourself and your employees, and then especially for supervisors, people who are in supervisory roles, and then now they've gotten some bad news and they're supposed to be given so
Sure.
and so their review for the year. It's like, you know, if litigation wasn't there, it just wouldn't be that intense of a day
Right.
for this person,
Yeah, and
and
I think the thing holding this, the collaborative divorce back is that a lot of people just don't know about it, right? So
exactly.
I think if the employers were to just simply advertise that this is, sort of another way to get divorced without having to litigate everything, basically everybody wins, right? The employer wins because they have an employee who's much more effective for, a much longer period of time. Their conflict period is much shorter, and their resources are more available, right? And then the employee obviously wins because they have their money to spend on their
Right.
kids and not lawyers, right? But yeah, I think the big thing holding it back is people just simply don't know, and so. I know, a lot of times, especially if you work in a bigger company, you notify your HR department when you're going through a divorce, just so they're aware. It's also considered a life event for insurance, right? So there's often things
Yes.
that you're doing with HR, with insurance, and so this would be a great time for employers to just say, hey, here's some information about some alternative methods, and who knows, maybe in the future this won't be the alternative. This will be just the common way it happens, but I think we're
Don't say
we're
who
still a
knows,
long way
Chris. It's
off.
100% going to be the common way that it happens. We
All right,
believe.
it will. It will.
And
But yeah,
so,
so people need to know about it, right?
yes. And that's
So
why
what?
we're talking. And I think, the big message and what I want everyone to hear is divorce is not just about like you or your family member. This is a huge effect on society. It has had a huge
Right.
effect on society. It has been such a
Mm-hmm.
big piece as to, the how people are dealing with people right now. A lot of that is there's been a lot of attack
Right.
in the family that was not there before you litigated family issues. And so now we have this
Mm-hmm.
whole other layer and people are treating each other differently. That affects society and it has affected society. We're at the lowest marriage rate of all of recorded history. The suicide rate is astronomical. A lot of that is to do with people who are dealing with family and domestic issues. The list goes on and all of it's listed in the book, but for people who may not be going through a divorce or family member may not be going through a divorce, but work in HR or own a small business or are a CEO of a large business,
Mm-hmm.
everybody's affected to business and industry in some way. And so my request is, if you can just think for a minute, if there's a way for you to help spread this awareness, please reach out to my firm. I can give you materials. We have programs for HR companies where they can, know what the collaborative and mediation entities are that are in their areas. A lot of people are
Mm-hmm.
doing this all online. In the coronavirus, you don't have to have an attorney who lives in your state anymore necessarily. You can have a
Well, that's
mediator who
interesting.
lives anywhere. You can do Zoom. All of this can be Zoom. You can do your entire divorce settlement via Zoom and not have to
Mm-hmm.
sit beside your husband or wife. You could all be on a Zoom call and finalize it with your attorneys. All four people. We've been doing those all over the place. Court has never closed for us because we don't go to court. We don't have that same set of rules. And so we're settling
Right.
cases now. People are in controversy, and with the world the way that it is and all of the controversy, if you're going to get a divorce because it's controversy there too, do you really want to throw yourself into litigation in the middle of what is going on in 2020?
Yeah.
That's a lot,
Yeah.
like, for anybody's mental health. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that, big public service announcement we're trying to do over here.
Yeah, I mean, 2020 is worth mentioning. I think, all the statistics you mentioned, the divorce and suicide. I mean, those rates are all going up with 2020, right? And it's sad, and we need them to come down, those rates to come down. But the reality is, more people are getting divorced after having been stuck at home with their spouse for months on end, right? I think that
Mhm.
certainly is a factor.
Absolutely. And what better way to do it, especially in the throes of 2020, than, to be able to have some conflict diffusement and
Mm-hmm.
be able to have a rational attorney or a rational mediator help you to navigate the conflict, but not become prey of the conflict.
Right.
Conflict is a part of life. Just because you're in conflict doesn't mean that you're in a devastating part of your life, but it is manageable if you do it
Mm-hmm.
appropriately. And if you have skilled people at managing conflict, then you're going to be able to manage your conflict. If you have skilled people at fighting tooth and nail for cause, and war is what they know and use to be able to address conflict, then that's what you're going to get. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's more about self-preservation, I think, at this point. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. So, if you had to give an elevator pitch to somebody in HR at a major corporation who didn't know anything about collaborative divorce, kind of what's your pitch to them, and what sort of help can you, or how can they, sort of get involved with collaborative divorce or offering that to their employees?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are multiple organizations around the United States that govern and give resources for collaborative professionals. There are international ones, statewide ones, and then for the country of the United States. There are multiple different agencies, so I can help you with that. But my pitch about collaborative is this: it's an out of court settlement statement that is extremely successful at helping people get through the conflict of marriage and divorce issues without affecting as much of the rest of their lives, because it's a contained process that's built to help people communicate and resolve conflict. It generally lasts 3 months. Sometimes it lasts a year, but that is a purposeful thing because the process is chosen by the clients. How
Mm-hmm.
long it's going to take is their process, but it's a very efficient way to get divorced. And I think that's what it boils down to. Efficiency is very important to me as a person, just as a business person. I think naturally that way. And
Mm-hmm.
collaborative is a very evolved, efficient process. You're not dealing with the archaic systems that were then it was like forced molding of our archaic law systems to fit the family. Law doesn't
Mm-hmm.
change like that. It doesn't change rapidly enough to be able to do that versus having this
Right.
process that was created to fit the family. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, absolutely. So in short, I mean, instead of an employee going through a divorce that may last a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years in litigation, there's an alternative process to where they can go through this collaborative effort. It takes about 3 months, and then their divorce is finished, and everybody's back on their way.
Exactly. No court involved. I mean, due to the laws of each state, it may be that you finalize your agreement by submitting it to the court for their final approval. You do not have to do that in
Right.
all states, so it would depend. And obviously, this isn't legal advice. This is process advice. My goal is to
Mm-hmm.
have billboards across the United States of America that are like, please know your options. Just know what
Yeah.
your options
There is
are
another
before
way.
you pick. There are so many
Yeah.
roads diverging in the wood. Please pick a road that fits you. Don't just go with the road that your best friend tells you because of their terrible divorce. When someone starts to tell you that
Right.
they had a terrible divorce, start to be aware that you may not want to be choosing the exact same things that they did if it was so terrible.
Right. Yeah. Don't follow their way because yeah, and I think once you get involved with a contentious divorce, it sort of spirals out of control a lot of times, doesn't it?
hmm Absolutely. And the way that this relates to NPO is that collaborative is very focused on shared parenting. The way that
Mm-hmm.
people are compromising is that they're utilizing shared parenting methods. Both people are agreeing to these custody arrangements. So it's not
Right.
that any one custody arrangement is being forced on another. So it is shared parenting. That's what we do in collaborative. We just do whatever is best for the children. We involve child psychologists in the process if necessary. It can be as
Mm-hmm.
intense or as minimal as a process as you want it to be. Again, that's the beautiful thing about collaborative is it's your choice. But you know,
Right.
it is saving the children and focusing on shared parenting. And I think also shared parenting benefits collaborative because the more shared parenting is the norm, when we have more Kentuckys and more states that are following that, then people will automatically gravitate to mediation and collaborative because
Yeah.
the wind will be out of the sails.
Sure. Yeah, I think some of the feedback we've gotten at MPO, at least that I've heard in my state in Kansas here, is that more and more couples are choosing, shared parenting as the norm when they agree on things. The problem that still exists is when you have one spouse or both spouses who want to litigate everything and they get in the system, and then that system, naturally drives conflict and basically whoever gets to court first gets to pick the custody schedule and usually that's as minimal time as they can with the other parent so that one person or the other can get the most child support, right? And it just sort of, like I said, spirals out of control from there. So
And one
yeah,
thing
I
we
think
want to keep
it's
in mind is that's terrible now, but that's also
hmm
terrible. And I want to highlight something for everyone. I want every parent to hear me. All the states are moving towards online recording. That means your 18-year-old child, while in college and doing a project about their family history, is going to find your court pleadings and read them.
hmm
And they're going to know how much they were worth per month and they're going to know exactly what happened and all of that stuff that your attorney is like, oh, this is just boilerplate language. Even though it's
right.
aggressive, this is normal, this is what we do. It is highly probable that your child is going to read that
hmm
very
yeah,
soon.
and certainly a lot of people don't think about those consequences, right?
No, and that's what I wanted because I talk to adult children of divorce frequently who are in
hmm
college, who went to their parents' home county and went and pulled it personally at the clerk's office because they wanted to know, and
right.
they are free to go do that. This is not confidential by any stretch of the imagination.
Right.
Once
No.
you've submitted to the court system, not confidential. Now, if you are in collaborative, it is 100% confidential. But if you are
Right.
in litigation, it is not confidential. Those documents can be found and they are being found and these children are hurt because they don't understand what you were going through then. And I get it. It's tough. I 100%.
Right.
I sit through this with all of my clients day in and day out. I've been through it myself. I went through it with my parents.
hmm
It was, I mean, I know this from all facets and I know it's difficult, but I just want everyone to know that the long-term effects are so much more difficult. They are so much more difficult.
Yeah, that's certainly something that people I don't think really consider in the heat of the moment, going through, an emotional contested divorce. I think that's one of the furthest things from your mind, and certainly the lawyers are out there aren't really, putting that in their clients' minds either, right? Because they're just kind of doing their job and they're doing what they need to do or what they think they need to do. but
When
certainly I
technically
don't
you're
think.
going to them for their specialty, which is to go
Right.
in and get what they need by
Mm-hmm.
specific acts. So you're going in and saying, I accept the rules that you play by. That's why this
Right.
is so amazing to me, because it is the client's choice who they hire, you know? So,
Mm-hmm.
so, so the attorneys, yes, it is very destructive what's happening in litigation, but that's kind of like if you jump off the high dive, it's a little bit risky. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
you
Yeah.
entered into litigation, you read the complaint. Obviously, it didn't sound like we were going to have a picnic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
I
I
mean,
want
and
there to be some personal responsibility, you know?
yeah. So in short, just remember your kids can go back and look at all of the divorce records and all the motions that were filed, and all that stuff is public record, and your kids or grandkids, could certainly go and read those someday, and you might have some splaining to do later on
Some
when you're a bit
splaining.
older. Some splaining.
Exactly.
You might have to have a really uncomfortable conversation with your kids, and you may not like their reaction to it either. So just remember,
And I
when
think,
you're going, go ahead.
sorry, Chris, if it's already happened and you made a mistake, I don't want you to feel like you need to have some sort of guilt for the rest of your life and beat yourself up over
Right.
it. Children also understand if you're like, I was really emotional and I made a mistake. I wish I would have
Yeah.
chosen a different process. I had no idea at the time. None of that existed back then. I mean, this is all brand new. So, if 10 years
Mm-hmm.
ago you got yourself into this and you're still dealing with emotions, don't think that anybody is ever judging you on this. This is a hard process. Most of this information is not
Absolutely.
available to hardly anyone.
Yeah.
That's the reason that I'm out here trying to preach this sermon so that people
Mm-hmm.
understand that there are other options, but I'm not judging you if you are in litigation. I just want you to know there are ways
Absolutely.
you can get out of it. You can
Yeah.
you can file a collaborative stay. Also, if you've already gone through it and the damage is already done, it can still be undone. The book has all of the process of which you can do it, but a lot of that is honest conversations with your kids that you didn't have a
Mm-hmm.
lot of good information and you did the best that you could and you're human and that's okay.
Yeah.
But feeling like that what happened was if it affected your child and they're coming to you was 100% okay because you were being hurt in the moment too, is not going to
Mm-hmm.
help you restore that relationship.
Right. Yeah, and I think kids are a lot more perceptive than adults often give them credit for, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think
More what they make than what they
they they can
know.
perceive a lot more about what's going on than what you. I mean, because a lot of people have in their divorce decrees, right, that the case cannot be discussed with the kids or things like that. But I mean, the real reality is kids perceive quite a bit on their own without having to be told.
Yeah. Like when you're talking to your mom on the phone and you're just dishing, the
Mm-hmm.
kids in the other room and they know what is important information to pick up on. I mean, it's kind of
Yeah.
crazy in our collaborative sessions because, our child psychologists talk directly with the children, then they come back and kind of give us a feel for what's happened.
Right.
Um, they can like regurgitate 30-minute conversations.
Wow.
And the parents are just sitting there like, they didn't hear that. And we're like, kind of
Oh,
sounds
they
like they
heard
did.
something. Yeah.
Pretty sure they heard it. So
Yeah.
and that's a tough room to be in when the parents realize what all their parents actually, because no parent's trying to do that on purpose.
Right.
Nobody wants to subject their kids to that because that is heart wrenching for children. I mean, I can like just remember at myself as a child and take a deep
Absolutely.
breath of feeling that level of just intensity when the two people who made you hate each other. Um, it's a lot for kids, and when parents realize that what they've really exposed their children to, it's a lot then too. But we can help you with that every day.
Mm-hmm.
Like, every day I help clients to choose a better way. It's not easy, none of this is easy. This is a difficult process, but it's also the biggest
Right.
transition you're ever going to have in your life. And if you're dealing with a custody battle, it's the biggest thing that's happening in your life. And, you want to handle it with a process that you can be proud of. You want to handle it with a process that,
Absolutely.
should your child be in the exact same situation, you would say, you should do it this way.
Yeah. So for a company or human resource department that wants to sort of offer the collaborative divorce option to their employees and maybe not give them any additional funds or resources, but they just want to give them the information. They can
Hmm.
contact your firm. They can read the book, right? And I mean, what's the best way for an HR person to very quickly find out about this and then get that information to their employees?
Well, you can contact us at media@anrlaw.com, and we're going to get you the packet of information that you can immediately share for no cost to you, just so that you have it for informational purposes. But one thing that we are doing is with the Fair Co-Parenting app, we are looking at having that be a resource for HR professionals where they can refer the app, and the app itself would refer the mediation and collaborative processes. And so
Okay,
the app
excellent.
itself is built to help parents co-parent and be able to deal with conflict, and it gives them a mechanism to be able to do that. So what we're doing is we are trying to, through the app, help make it a little bit more directed so the HR professional can say, hey, here's X amount off this app. If you download it, please look at the resources section. You'll be able to see, I know that you've reported that you feel like you're going to be going through this divorce. This is a way for you to be able to communicate with your spouse. Additionally, this has resources in it for where you can go to have all of the options explained to you. You just want to have that information. There will be videos from me on there just explaining there are multiple different options. I can't give you legal
Hmm.
advice, but I can tell you all day long the different options across America that you can choose. I mean, there's so many different formats of it for each state, but they're all there. It's just, what does it specifically look like in your state? And then the app would be able to geographically target that. So that's what we're working on right now. For HR companies that are interested in that, we are able
Hmm.
to get with them and get them pricing on that. And the benefits package and it's not really pricing, it's the benefits package that we can help add to their already employee assistance programs.
Excellent. Yeah, and so that sounds like something that's pretty
Yeah.
simple that a company can do to reach out to their employees and just give them another option, right?
Yeah. And that's what it's about. And it's like, okay, if we just do a cost benefit analysis on that, if we start to take, what is your average pay for employee and the average time out of work and the average rate of loss of production, and you just start to do rough numbers, they start to get really large really fast.
Hmm.
And so it's such small output for such large effect. And
Hmm.
it's not that you're making the decision for them as to who their attorney is when you're doing this. You're just
Right.
saying it is what I have received from my training is that in this department there is a big need for awareness. And so because we're here for you as your company to give you resources, because we want to make sure that you know things about, how to invest, how to have insurance, how to have life insurance, how to have health insurance. All of those things are resources. This is another
Hmm.
resource so that you can just know and have awareness.
Awesome. This is definitely something that's new and
Right?
something that people need to be aware of, right? And I think the biggest thing right now is just getting people to be aware that there's another option. And thank you so much for putting that out there and all you do within the community here and helping us support shared parenting and helping people know that there really is another option out there besides sort of getting crossways in litigation for months and years on end because
Agreed.
people need that. People need that.
100%.
So
And this all really started for me with I started my practices in a small community. So it was a really obvious kind of test group because my clients started to become a parent, right? They were sitting on the same side of the ball field. They
right.
were being nice to each other at the school dance. It was really obvious because it's
Mm-hmm.
a smaller group of people who chose collaborative and who chose litigation.
Who
So
didn't?
that really
Right.
created the where I won the Small Business Leader of the Year here for my county. And they said, and this is why I started down this path, they said the reason that they were giving me the award is because my clients were healthy, happy, contributing members of society.
Well, that's awesome.
So, isn't that what we want, and especially as a business, isn't that what you want for your staff members? And
Oh
so,
yeah.
it's a little bit of a responsibility, gotta tell you. Like, I feel like this responsibility to help America
Mm-hmm.
understand this. And I feel like it's going really well. But there's still so many people
Yeah. It's a
to
big
help.
job. Certainly is a big job. Well, and you've had great success with your book. Tell us a little bit about that, and then we'll wrap it up here.
Yeah, so the book's The Cure for Divorce Culture. It really gives the historical perspective of how did we get here? What is the culture of divorce? It's aggressive, really aggressive. And what created it? You know, there's a pendulum there. And I think it would behoove everyone to understand it. That's what the book really
Mm-hmm.
highlights. The stats about where we are today. You know, it doesn't get into the details of my clients' lives because all of that is confidential. It does give some highlighted stories of people who kind of recognized and fixed their relationships with their parents later in life.
Right.
And that's a big perspective that I carry, which is the children of divorce perspective, you know, the adult children of divorce, which would be me. There are all these generations now from where we had the huge divorce spike after,
Right.
you know, all the movements you can read about in the book. And so, you know, here we are today. And I think that it's a beautiful place really to make this change. And honestly, I think that COVID is the silver lining is that it's giving an opportunity for people to see this so vividly now.
That's awesome. And tell us again where people can find you, Facebook, all those sorts of social media
Yep.
channels.
At ANR Law, and then ANRlaw.com is the website. Divorce Healthy is the podcast. You can also find me on YouTube now, Ashley-Nicole Esquire. And so we have a big YouTube thing coming out. So we're excited about that just to reach that section of the population. Again,
Awesome.
the goal is awareness. So we're trucking
Yes.
along.
Get get all the information out there. Well, thank you so much for coming on, and all that you do again within this space, and for all the parents that you help. And we look forward to talking with you again.
Absolutely. Thanks, Chris.